am really excited and very nervous to be here today. I think times like these they're rare and they're special, and it's really fun to be involved. I wish it was more common that people connected this way with each other, and so thank you. I'm really excited. I wanted to start just by giving you a little intro about me. Yes, I grew up in North Dakota, and I loved it. I loved the country, I loved the quiet, I loved the gardening. I liked hunting. I grew up doing all of that kind of stuff and really liked it. I come from a family of 5. I'm the oldest girl, but the second kid. And I was really close with my older brother growing up. I was like his shadow, so I was a real big tomboy. And I was super close with him. He was kind of my hero, and he comes up again later in my story. So that's why I share a little bit with that. But I pretty much did everything he did. I wished I could play football, but I'm kind of small, so I would have gotten hurt. But I just really loved following him around. So I moved to Utah to go to school. I moved out as fast as I could. And I was excited to be independent and on my own and facing the world. Life didn't really hit me until like 2011, 2012. I was kind of in a nice, comfortable bubble until then. I'm really bad at math, but I was around, 23. My husband's here, that's who I'm talking to in the back, but anyway, so here's my story. So I think it's important to note that in 2011, I came home from a mission trip for my church and just felt like I was rocking and rolling. Like I felt like everything was on track. I felt like super great with my faith, which I felt like was the lens that I made my decisions through. And then my brother comes back in the story, who I felt like was a big example for me, and he kind of kept me out of trouble for the majority of my life. And so I come home from my mission trip. He gets married like a couple of months after that. And so he gets married in April, and in August, I'm helping him move out of his apartment from his wife. They had a really ugly divorce. And that really shook my foundation. I felt like he was kind of my example, and he kind of did like all the things that you should do, right, to have things go right in your life. And they weren't going right, and so I kind of threw a little bit of a tantrum and said that if it wasn't working for him, who would it work for, And so that was the beginning of a rough road for me. I felt like my floor, when you're walking down the stairs and you think you're at the bottom, but you have one more step, that like thud you get in your stomach, right? I felt like more it was kind of like I stepped off a cliff and went rolling down the mountain. And then I just started making like not great decisions from there. And I didn't really, I wasn't making decisions that were respectful to myself. And so that was in the fall of 2012. 2011. Spring of 2012, I was longboarding down Provo Canyon, and I flew off my board. And the last thing I remember was being airborne. And I ended up in the hospital, and I was there in ICU for 4 days. And I had bleeding in my brain. And it was a long road to recover physically. And so I spent the rest of 2012 basically just sleeping, recovering from a brain injury. And then somebody during that time was like, oh, you should do yoga. It helps you recover, from that kind of stuff. And so, that was kind of a big pill for me to swallow, because I had this facade of always having to be the tough one, right? And I was like, yoga's for wimps. Or people who can't exercise for real, or do something for real. I felt that way. I was like, yoga is for people who are injured. At that time I was injured, so I think it made it easier for me to go to. So and I also kind of thought yoga was for weird people. Really kind of out there people. And so I went to my first class, and I fell asleep at the end, and the teacher had to yell at me to wake me up. Really awkward. So then that was in the summer, and dates probably don't matter too much, but 5 or 6 months later, I find myself back in Utah. I had made some friends that were going to this Muay Thai and boxing gym, and they're like, oh, they have classes for girls there. They have yoga. And I said, okay, perfect, I can go. So I went, and I loved it. It was a totally different environment than the first place that I went to. And it helped me start to be stronger again physically after my accident, because I also had broken my collarbone, so I couldn't really do anything. And so that I had to build my strength back up. And I would go once a week, and I started to realize that I also forgot to look at the time when I started. So are you going to flag me down when it's time? Okay. Okay, perfect.
You just go after you go.
Okay. And so when I first started going to yoga here in Utah, I would go once a week. And I was in college. It was my last year of college. And I loved it. I felt like it was starting to, how do I say it? It started to feed something inside of me that I didn't know was hungry, if that makes sense. And I quickly found that, yes, it helped me physically, but it also was helping me mentally. And then it got me to an emotional state, and then a spiritual state after. And so it kind of worked in that those increments. And when I first started yoga, like I said, it was only once a week, but soon after I was going once a day, sometimes twice a day. I like to say I kind of got weird with it, because everything was yoga. I'd go to my classes, and I'd come home, and I'd be teaching my roommates how to do headstands against the door. It was just so fun. And then I started to really crave it, because it just helped me so much. I felt like it helped me think more clearly. I was less stressed. I was doing better in my classes. I was sleeping better. But I want to talk a little bit more about when because I feel like before I started doing yoga, things got really ugly for me. And it was kind of a culmination of a lot of things. I feel like it was kind of a perfect storm. And if there was ever a time that I would have turned to substance, it would have been then. And it was really interesting, because I started doing yoga, and then I had some friends encourage me to take a yoga teacher training, And I really was I think I only did yoga for like maybe a year and a half before I did my training. And I look over here because Brittany is who I took my training from. She's incredible. I'm excited for you guys to hear from her. So I finished my training, which is like a month long. And then I immediately started teaching in rehab centers. And my mantra during that time was that, and sorry, I'm like shaking a little. Everything's fine. I'm just nervous. But my mantra during that time was, I'm not turning to that because I want to be teaching the class and not in the class. And I said that to myself, I don't know how many times. And because I found it to be incredibly healing to share and to guide other people in the journey of finding healing this way. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it, but I found yoga to be a lot like life. And I don't know if any of you have tried yoga before or like seen it, or kind of how it works, but the way my mind works is that you have like your flow of class, right? You have times that are hard, you have times that are easy, you have times when you have to breathe through things. There's times when you're in seriously uncomfortable situations and you're asked to do things that you don't think you can do yet. And I think that happens a lot every day. And I found for me that in yoga, it provided me an opportunity to practice for real life. And I could go set out my purple yoga mat and have my safe space to learn how to balance things, learn how to breathe when I'm uncomfortable, learn how to face things that I don't really want to face. And one interesting thing about yoga is that it can, if you let it can bring things out in you that like you didn't know you had. It can bring a strength to you that has been in your heart all the time that you just had to discover, and you had to give yourself space to like set it free, you know? And that's something that I learned. I learned that, because growing up, it was all about, you know, if you're uncomfortable, just push through, it's fine, it'll be over, you know? But like rub some dirt in it. And I learned that it didn't have to be that way. And you could be strong, but you could also be soft. And you could have your boundaries, and also like you could know where you could be better. And there's always something to work on. That's another thing I really like. A good lesson that I've learned in yoga is that there's never a place where you have everything perfect. And life isn't about having things perfect. It's just about showing up and doing the best you can. And I think that it's important to remember that. I also think yoga is really fun, and you shouldn't take it too seriously, because who cares if you can do a handstand or not, right? But I feel like yoga for me, before I started doing yoga, it was all about, it like was for people who couldn't handle it. It couldn't handle like real exercise, you know. But you know, it can be what you make it. It can be what you need. And I've been amazed at the like life lessons that yoga has taught me. I'm just gonna look at my notes for a second and make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, thank you. I I think that there's just one last thing I wanted to share. I think the other thing that has made the biggest difference for me in practicing yoga is the idea that you can't give what you don't have. And for me, and I know for a lot of you too, like a lot of my focus and a lot of my energy in my day goes into the relationships that I have. With my family, with my husband. I have a beautiful 9-month-old son. And I'm grateful for where I am today because I want to be there for them. And I think without yoga, I wouldn't be as anchored, as rooted, as steady. I wouldn't know how to face the things that come in life, and they come for everyone. And I think those are the biggest things that it's taught me. So anyhow, every time I practice this message, it's come out different. And so I hope that was helpful or, was able to resonate with some of you. But thank you again. That's the end.